Hey guys, we are back. Will Saletan, Sam Stein, YouTube. It's the perfect Sunday mix. Subscribe to the feed before we get started because we're going to be talking about, there's a few subjects that bring Will more pleasure, I suppose, than Lindsey Graham. I think you might be one of the
Dessert brings me more pleasure than Lindsey, but that's okay.
You are our historian. You are our expert on Lindsey. You wrote a definitive series on the guy. I was kind of struck, and the reason we're going to talk about this because I asked you to come on. I was the one who was struck by Lindsey this morning. Lindsey did 2 Sunday shows. One was Meet the Press, and the other one was CNN. And what struck me about it was how thoroughly he disagreed with what Trump was doing, but in like this like sort of jovial, well, we're all good and we're all happy with it, but like there was like substantive issues one after another where he's just like, no, I'm not quite on board with that. The first one we're gonna play. This one is from CNN. Just I want to set up the context here. Donald Trump over the weekend, yesterday I believe, told reporters that he thinks the Egyptians and the Lebanese should take millions, or the Jordanians, I forget which one, should take millions of Palestinians from the Gaza Strip and just house them. He didn't even say for a short period of time. He said it could be longer term, so that they could level the Gaza Strip, which he called a demolition site. Somewhat factual in certain places, for sure. But it's a profoundly disturbing idea to just literally remove a whole population. Obviously, curious what the people in Dearborn, Michigan think about this. But putting that aside, Lindsey Graham was like, I don't think that's a good idea. Let's play the clip.
The idea that all the Palestinians are going to leave and go somewhere else, I don't see that to be overly practical. I don't know what he's talking about.
All right, so there you have Lindsey Graham on CNN. And then there was this. Lindsey Graham was on Meet the Press. He was asked about pardoning of J6 riders, those who beat police. Will and I talked about that in a prior video. You should check that out if you haven't. And once again, Lindsey Graham said this.
Do you believe that President Trump was wrong to issue these blanket pardons to the January 6th
Number one,
defendants?
he had the legal authority to do it, but I fear that you will get more violence. Pardoning the people who went into the Capitol and beat up a police officer violently, I think was a mistake because it seems to suggest that's an okay thing to do. Kamala Harris wanted to raise bail money for people burning down Minneapolis. Biden pardoned half his family going out the door. I think most Americans, if this continues, to see this as an abuse of the pardon power, that we'll revisit the pardon power of the president if this continues. But as to pardoning violent people who beat up cops, I think that's a mistake.
All right. Last video, and then we'll get to Will. He was also on Meet the Press. He's asked about another controversial Trump decision, this time to revoke the security detail that the federal government had been providing to, in Lindsey's case, he was asked about 2 people who had served for Donald Trump, John Bolton and Mike Pompeo. Both of them have threats on their lives from foreign actors. And Trump, who hates both of them, decided to revoke their security detail. He said, well, they're wealthy independently and they can pay for their security detail. Lindsey Graham, not a fan. He said this.
You disagree with the decision to revoke their security protection, it sounds like.
President, if it's needed, I want to keep it. And it seems to me that the threat levels justify the continuation of the program, but I'll know more next week.
All right. There's 2 more things that I'm going to get to, but I want to get Will in first. If you just fundamentally disagree on these major issues, but you're on board for the larger enterprise, does that make you a bad politician? Does it make you moral? Does it make you savvy? Like, what is your take?
So it's foolish. It's foolish because Lindsey Graham, let me just take people back since I know the history of Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham in 2015, when he was running for president and Donald Trump was running, Lindsey Graham had this critique of Trump, which was correct, which was that Trump was a bad guy. All right. Trump said a lot of bad, dangerous things like, purge the Muslims and stuff like that, kill the families of terrorists. It was all vile. And Lindsey Graham said, A, it's wrong. He's wrong on those things, like what we just heard. But B, the reason why Trump says these things is because Trump is immoral. Like he understood that, like, if you're a bad person like this, you're going to do bad things, not just the ones that we just talked about it, that happened today, but next week, you're going to be doing something, right? What then happened to Lindsey Graham is Trump, wins the primary, he wins the presidency, and Lindsey starts sucking up to him. And Lindsey has always been willing to say the latest thing Donald Trump did was wrong, or I disagree with it, or some thing like that. But he lost the key thing, which was this is not going to end, right? And the whole history of Trump has been more and more of this stuff. And that's why we see him now enumerating things that he disagrees with. But if you really disagreed with these things, your job should have been to prevent Trump from being president. And remember, Lindsey Graham had many alternatives in the Republican Party that he could have supported in 2024, and he chose Trump over them.
Well, I'm curious for what you think about this, because it's funny to me that Graham does this, because even though he does this all the time and has done it for years upon years upon years now, he's still kind of regarded as an interloper in the movement, right? Like, people don't embrace him in MAGA world. In fact, they boo him. They boo him when he goes on stage.
Trump goes to campaign for him in South Carolina, and they boo Lindsey.
Trump kind of mocks him every now and then. He's like, he's not a real believer, but he's good for us. And like, he still gets made fun of and disrespected. But is that just fine for him because he at least has a seat at the table?
Well, he's always been about, he says, when was it? A couple of years ago, he goes to Saudi Arabia. He swore off Saudi Arabia when the crown prince, killed Khashoggi, right? The journalist Khashoggi. And then he's like steaming for years. And then eventually he goes back and he says, they asked him, the Saudi TV asked him why. And he said, FOMO, fear of missing out. That's who Lindsey is, right? He was saying that's about a murderer. That's the kind of guy who ran a murder. So with Trump, it's all the same. Lindsey wants to be in the middle of the action. He's not to the extent that he was, but he wants to be a player, and he's willing to sacrifice a lot for that, including his integrity.
Yeah, it's funny because when Trump was putting together this cabinet 2.0, no one ever thought Lindsey Graham was going to get a spot. But like in an ideal world, in a normal world, Lindsey would have been rumored, right? He's been an ally, right. Believes in, basically, and echoes whatever Trump says, fashions himself a foreign policy thinker, and ran for president, but that was never in the cards. It does raise the question, because the other two things that happened this morning, again, there was 5 places where Lindsey Graham was just sort of like, I'm not on board with Trump, which is a lot. That's a lot. Okay, that's a lot. I just want to be clear. Like, you normally, when your party's supposed to be on the same page. He said on the issue of Trump firing the inspector generals. Trump fired, I think, a dozen or more inspector generals at various agencies. He said while he believes Trump was in his right to do it, he also said technically Trump did break the law. Okay. small technicality, but sometimes you gotta break the law. And I just can't get over that. Technically, he broke the law. And he was asked about Tulsi Gabbard. And notably, Lindsey did not, he was asked about it, he did not commit to supporting Tulsi for DNI, Director of National Intelligence. More or less was like, she's got some more cut out for her. As our resident Grahamologist, Lindsayologist, whatever you want to say, can you see him doing anything to like rebuke Trump for the IG stuff, or do you even see him? Is it possible that he will vote against Tulsi?
Oh, that's an interesting question about Tulsi. Let me think about that, but let me answer your question in general. So there's a couple of things about Lindsey that make him. Yeah, I'm thinking about what you said about why MAGA doesn't trust Lindsey. They're right not to trust it, because I hate to defend Lindsey, but the truth is he knows better, Sam. He knows, unlike a lot of the MAGA types who don't know better, and unlike
he kind of hinted that after January. Although I don't know if it was correct, but after January 6th, he was like, "I'm off," I'm done with this. Yeah.
Well, he does remember. So, okay, a couple of things. Lindsey, he was a JAG. He does believe in the rule of law. He's just willing to compromise, right? And he'll say things that. To his credit, he's criticizing things. He's openly disagreeing with Trump in the situation where a lot of his colleagues aren't. So
no, exactly. I want to just pause there because I don't want this to be us dunking on Lindsey. I actually appreciate that he's up there being like, you know what, I don't agree with this. You know what? Yeah, he did technically break the law, and you know what? I'm not comfortable with Tulsi. Like that, I appreciate the candidness, and I think this to a degree it just shows the contortions that a lot of Republicans do have to make intellectually and philosophically in order to survive within Trump. You have 5 major things where you're like, this is not great, but I'm willing to just put that aside and go along with the vision.
Right. And so one of the reasons why I didn't trash Lindsey when I wrote the series about him is he's not empty. He actually believes things. So one of them, as we were just discussing, the rule of law, he does believe in that. He believes in, it's the whole JAG history and Judiciary Committee and all that. The other thing is he is a hawk. He's a national security hawk, right? And so the Gabbard nomination is going to be one of those things that it's a gut check for him. Is he willing to? Because, Sam, there is a war going on inside the Republican Party right now over that nomination and a couple of others. And the Hawks, what's going on for folks who haven't followed it, Mike Turner, the hawkish chair of the Intelligence Committee, pushed out allegedly coming from Trump or people around Trump. Certainly the isolationist wing of the party pushed him out. And Gabbard represents the isolationists. And so the struggle is like what's going on in Trump's cabinet. Marco Rubio, not Graham, gets to be Secretary of State. But Sam, do you think maybe Lindsey Graham behind the scenes weighed in somehow to help get Marco into that spot because he knows there needs to be a voice for the Hawks and the administration? I don't know if you believe that or if you have any thoughts. I wouldn't
be surprised in the slightest. And it is interesting because the Trump foreign policy team resembles the fissures. It's not just Rubio; it's Waltz, and then you have Tulsi, obviously, and then J.D. Vance, who very much is of the mindset of let's not have foreign entanglements to the degree that we've had them. And you're seeing it play out where there's a lot of Tucker Carlson, Elon Musk type folks who are out there being like, if Tulsi goes down, I'm going to go torch people. We're going to primary the Republicans who didn't vote for her. And I know Lindsey's reading that stuff. So I am kind of curious where you come down. Does he ultimately, you don't have to make a prediction, but I am curious how he votes on this one.
I think that if it's close and he thinks he can make a difference, he'll take her down. But I've been wrong so many times in expecting him to do the right thing just because we know what he knows the right thing to do, which is to kill the nomination. But whether he will actually do it, I'm not so sure about that. And I just want to point out that this fight between the Hawks and the isolationists, so we just had J.D. Vance go on Face the Nation and say that we need to get rid of the weaponization in the intelligence agencies. And then right after him, they have on Mike Turner, the hawk, who says that he basically got pushed out and says, he adds a cryptic comment to Margaret Brennan where he says, we really need to focus on the foreign threats and not on our own intelligence agencies as a threat. And so he's opening the curtain and showing you what's going on, which is that there's a wing of the Republican Party led by Trump and Vance that wants to target the intelligence agencies because they just want to fight a domestic war against the people they think are their opponents, the deep state. And then there's a hawkish wing of the party represented by Lindsey Graham and Marco Rubio and Mike Turner and others that wants to say, guys, we really can't be fighting amongst ourselves because we all have a common enemy and the intelligence community is part of us against them. Yeah. I'm going to be really interested to see how that plays out.
Well, we'll be covering it. Hearings are this week, I believe on the 30th, if I remember correctly. Definitely, 30th, I think. We have a lot of hearings this week here. RFK, Tulsi, Kash Patel. By the way, we'll be doing live reaction to them, so tune in. Will, thanks so much, man. Appreciate you doing this. Always good to have your knowledge on Lindsey used for good purposes. We'll put it that way. And thank you guys for tuning into the YouTube feed. Really appreciate that. Subscribe as always, and we'll catch you later.